Welcome back to the Ask an Introvert podcast. I'm Jennifer Ho, your host and life coach for introverts. I help those of you who feel quietened in this world develop self-leadership to take up space exactly as you are to live your dream life. This episode is part of a mini series called Catching Up in Public, where I'll be reflecting on pivotal moments of my life in 2024. Now, in episode 21, we talked about my job search back in May 2024 when I decided I needed to quit the job I was in. And then I launched a job search, got an offer, negotiated, and accepted the new offer all in roughly a week. What I don't think I shared was that between jobs, I also decided to take 2 full weeks off, unpaid. And I called it my Funemployment era. Imagine sparkle emojis around it. Funemployment era. Now, what is fun employment? It is having fun while being intentionally unemployed. I know that not everybody gets to do that, but I did. I was prepared because I have this thing, which when I tell you I have to mark this episode as explicit, I have a fuck it fund. Yeah, have your emergency fund, be a responsible person, but also have a fuck it fund for when you just want to say fuck it all. It's great. All right. But back to the fun employment, this short but refreshing period felt like summer break in elementary school when you're like 7 and you don't have responsibilities and you don't even know what responsibilities are yet. I didn't owe anyone anything and I didn't have to push anything forward. It felt very lavish on top of me being aware of how privileged I am to be able to do that because I had the funds and also because every day there's a headline about some other company doing a mass layoff. And while I was celebrating and resting, I had friends who were trapped in jobs they hated or getting laid off. And I was worried that our differing circumstances would distance us. So during that period, I posted less on social and I would ask people how they were doing, but I held back from sharing about myself. And what I didn't realize was that I made my own worry come true. Like, I was worried that we would become distant because we have different circumstances. Well, we became distant because I wasn't sharing myself. Anyway, there's some kind of life lesson there, but that awareness around the things I did to protect my friends that might not have been protecting our friendships, that is for another time. Today in this episode, I'll be answering 6 questions around the topic of me finding freedom in my fun employment staycation. So here's what people ask. 1, so do you start work right away? And I was like, nope, I'm taking time off. And then they're like, oh, are you gonna go anywhere? I bet you have a trip planned. And I was like, nope, I'm staying home. I didn't travel because it's expensive to travel last minute, but also I was really wanting to stay home. Like that was well, gosh, the job search was in May. My last day at the previous job was like June 7th, and then I was gonna start the next job like June 24th or something like that. So looking back, like I had just come back from Singapore like May 1st. So it hadn't been that long since I traveled, and I was really craving being at home. Like it had been a while since I one took care of my home, two like actually really spent time here. There's this comedian Atsuko Okatsuka and she has this joke about how you need to stand in the corner that you never stand in because you're technically paying for that you're also paying for the ceiling and maybe you should be touching that and be like, yeah, it's here, I paid for this. I don't really remember how her joke goes, but that's my take on it. And I was like, hey, I also pay to be here. Let's be here. So as I was telling people about the plan to just stay home, not travel, do whatever my heart desires, people also ask, like, how did you structure your days during this 2-week break? I didn't. The point was to not have structure. The point was to be able to just do things whenever it came up in my head. Because when I'm working, if in the middle of the day I just want to go take a nap, I kind of have to still plan when the nap is going to fit in, right? Like it's got to be between meetings or maybe at lunch or right after lunch. But on this fun employment period, if I woke up at 6 a.m. and at 6:30 I felt like taking a nap, 30 minutes into getting up, I was going to take that nap. I was just going to act on it. I was going to give in to any impulses that I had. Which brings us to the next question. Like, what activities did you find most rejuvenating during this time? And I thought it would be like binging K-dramas or cooking food or those unplanned naps, but it was actually reading comics, reading webtoons to be very specific. And there's something that just felt like, um, how do I put this? Like when I watch K-dramas, there's not much that's left to the imagination, right? Because it's depicted visually and I hear the audio and all of that. But like when I'm reading webtoons, I kind of get the in between watching a show and just reading a book. Like I get visuals, so like my brain doesn't have to work that hard to think about like how pretty and handsome the male lead is, but I get to imagine what their voice sounds like. And I get to draw up all the nuances that aren't drawn in the comic. So it was just the right amount of mental and emotional stimulation. I don't want to say that I was being productive because I was just having fun, but like I didn't want to work too hard to have fun. And I think reading webtoons was that nice, rejuvenating balance activity for the kind of energy that I had and the energy that I wanted to be in for those 2 weeks. And I also spent most of these 2 weeks alone. And so afterwards, I was talking to another friend who didn't get to do this between her jobs. And she's also curious. Like, she asked me, how did this period of solitude impact your mental and emotional state? And I gotta say, like, it's like an introvert's retreat. Um, I yeah, I didn't remember exactly how she asked me, but like definitely my attitude is like I'm not worried about this at all. Like I would be happy if my sister and slash roommate just like wasn't there those 2 weeks. Like I just for an introvert, I feel like I am social, way more social than I'm expected to be. And so solitude was also rejuvenating in a different way than reading webtoons, but I felt like I had so much mental and emotional clarity because I was just by myself for this extended period of time. I wouldn't necessarily call myself like I don't think I have any people pleasing tendencies, but no matter where I go, like I have the eldest daughter, the older sister energy, and so I just care about other people. But here in during this fun employment, I just didn't care because I didn't have to because I wasn't around anyone, and I like there's so much freedom in this kind of space because I really prioritize myself and I felt celebrated for prioritizing myself too because most people, when they're between jobs, cannot do this for whatever reason, whether it's because they don't have their fuck it fund or because they're going to give in to their new job wanting them to start immediately, because of optics or whatever their reasons are or whatever their circumstances are, it's just rare for people to get to do this. So, although I've mentioned the fuck it fund a few times, I'm gonna reiterate this because it was asked. Because people were like, how could you afford to do this? I have a fuck it fund, is my financially responsible approach to being able to throw money at my problems sometimes. It's essentially a sinking fund. I don't know if this is common money advice, but I think it should be because your money should work for you. Like, yeah, do the responsible stuff, like save for retirement and all that. But don't be so responsible that it's at the expense of actually living your life right now. There has been a time where contributing to retirement was really limiting what I could do with my life. And so I had to adjust. Like, what's the rule? What do people say? Like, contribute like 12% or is like 15 now of your income to your retirement savings. I'm not a financial expert, so you're gonna have to do your research and make that decision for yourself. But there was a time in my life when that was just too much. It was not allowing me to do other things. So, there's always some kind of trade-off for things. So for like a year, I didn't save as much as I could for retirement, but I did stuff like traveling, and that gave me so much more confidence in myself. I learned from the travels how capable I was, and then I ended up doubling my salary. And then I was able to contribute even more to retirement. So I think I just went on a whole tangent. But while a fuck it fund might not be traditional financial advice, if it's something that gets you excited about what you're doing with your money, go for it. When it comes to money, you have to assess what kind of risks you're willing to have or take. And in my case, I call it a fuck it fund, but I was being extra financially responsible because my emergency fund is separate from that. After my emergency fund was fully funded, which for me personally, I decided I needed to have at least 6 month runway in my emergency fund. On top of that, I built this bucket fund as an approach to getting to throw money at my problems. So this Funemployment counts. One time, my mom was complaining over and over about how she couldn't trim her fruit trees. And these trees are like huge. They're like 20-year-old fruit trees. Like the biggest one is this persimmon tree that we can never reach the top every year. And so we just end up with at least 200 persimmons at the top of the tree, just leaving them there for squirrels to snack on or waiting for them to fall down on the ground because we can't reach them. Anyway, I've also used my Fuck It Fund before to fund tree trimmers for my mom because I wanted her to stop complaining about it. And so I allowed myself to throw money at that problem. All right, enough about how I was able to afford this. So another question that came up in conversation was, how did you prepare yourself for transitioning into your new job? Okay, I didn't. Like the fun employment was the preparation for me. And here's why. I really needed a reset because I was in a very unhealthy workplace before, and I want to reset myself so that I can just be open to starting from scratch in terms of workplace culture. I'd identified this new company that in every way that they could, they showed me that they had a healthy culture. And that is part of what sold me to want to work there. So when thinking about how I could transition into my new job, it wasn't necessarily about what projects I could do or what skills I needed. I just knew that I had to be a sponge in every single way possible, not just for the skills and projects, but also for a healthy culture. So it was important to me to become and to cultivate this energy that was entirely different from the energy that I was in at my last job, which had grown to become heavy. And while I set and enforce my boundaries as much as I could, it just got heavier and heavier, and it was taking a toll on me. So I decided the best way to prepare for my new job was to just shed all of that away. On top of having my boundaries, I'd also become extra guarded. And I don't remember if I mentioned this in the job search episode, but one of the things that I'd noticed about myself, because one of the things that made this last workplace so unhealthy was because there was a lot of turnover. As new people came in, I was just not curious about them anymore. Like I had some autopilot part of my brain had made this decision that it's not worth it to get to know people. But I actually love knowing how many kids someone has and all their kids' names and and where they've been traveling and things like that. It makes the small talk that you have to have in an office much more meaningful when I actually care, when I actually give a damn about the people and their stories to some extent, right? But I had just given up on that at some point. And I knew going into this new job that I wanted to come from a space of curiosity, not just in learning about the workings of the job or of the company, but I wanted to get to know the people that I work with. So that's some of the stuff that was going on in my head and some of the decisions I made about transitioning into my new job. None of it was about the tangible skill set because I knew I already had that. It was really preparing myself to be able to embrace a different work environment, to be able to embrace a new culture. I didn't want to make assumptions that things would just play out the same way it did at my last job. I'd worked there for 5 years. So I knew that stuff was embedded in me and wanted to let all of it go. So now we've landed on the last question for this episode, which is what advice would you give to introverts about the importance of taking breaks between jobs? Well, I got this question and I included it, but I don't know if I need to tell you anything else about how important it is to take the break. I think I have been an example of that and I've told you as much as I can so far. If there was anything I would add, I think the thing that comes to mind is that oh man, this is going to be a bit morbid, but my parents have been talking about retiring lately, and my dad's actually planning to retire a few years early. And he was worried about telling us, as in me and my two sisters. And I don't really know if he was afraid to be judged or what he was worried about, but he my mom really had to nudge him to tell us. I'm really not sure like how he expected us to receive it, but I was so happy. And part of why I was so happy, here's the morbid thing, is in my very first full-time job, I worked with a lot of older folks. Like I was just starting my career and they were ready to end their career and they're planning like what they're going to do in retirement. But they would retire and just a couple years out, they would pass away. And I don't know if it's because they were just so used to working all their lives that some big hole was missing, or if they worked themselves so hard that once they stopped working, something in their life or their body just needed to stop too. I don't really know, but I firmly believe that you should give yourself tastes of retirement throughout your life, and Funemployment is a break that is like that. I also don't think you should have to wait till the end of your career before you get to enjoy yourself. I think it is important to practice and know what you're like without someone telling you what to do without owing other people things. I would say that that's a very unique space and scenario that I got to experience because of the fun employment period that I got to have. I think that's where I want to end this. If there's anything you want to dig deeper on about this or any other topic that's specific to your situation, I am offering self-leadership office hours right now. They're 30-minute free coaching sessions for us to explore any topic of your choice. I will leave the link to book in the show notes. And if you have something that you want me to explore further or get my thoughts on through the podcast, then send me a DM on Instagram or submit it anonymously at byjenniferho.com/askanintrovert. All links are in the show notes. That's us for today. I will be back soon. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and turn on your notifications so you won't miss the next episode. I can't wait to talk to you again. Bye.